Hello and welcome back to the M4J Network Overview series. I am of course M4J, and today we are hopping aboard a cross-network train from here at Dendstone Carnegie to Sanley Central. I asked you at the end of last episode to vote for which route you wanted to see next, and even though it was a long time ago, with a staggering 67% of the votes, the winner was Service 9FXX, the cross-region service via Plenborough Taurina. As a result, we will be covering some familiar territory as we cruise back down to Plenborough Taurina before reversing at the magnificent terminal at Plenborough to traverse the south coastal route for the very first time in this series. This does make my job a little easy to begin with no real history to cover from here to Plenborough that I haven't talked about before. So let's quickly go over today's rolling stock before we depart Dendstone. XRegion have pioneered the use of Class 33 hauled Mark II carriages, with all but a handful of their services operated using these consists. Besides Guard City Great Eastern, XRegion is the only operator on the M4J network to utilise Mark IIs, with the rest of the network upgrading to either Mark IIIs or Mark IVs or just switching to multiple units. This did mean a lot of redundant stock was available for a very low cost, allowing Cross-Network, XRegion's parent company, to swoop in and acquire them on the cheap to use across their operations. Every consist contains a buffet car and a thankfully functional toilet for these long journeys. The seating does leave a little to be desired, but the experience is overall pretty good for the cost of the ticket. The good news is these trains are still reliable enough to run efficiently. The bad news is we will be limited to a top speed of only 85 miles per hour due to the safety restrictions placed on the carriages. Oh well, this is a budget operator after all. Right, let's take a seat in the buffet car and get ready for our journey along the south coast. Leaving Dendstone, we pass through the southern tunnels and rejoin the line towards Drentbourne. Our only stops between Dendstone and Plenborough will be at Drentbourne Retea and Carfingfield. Since I've already covered these stations last time out, I'll just keep quiet and enjoy the view out of the window. Well, unless I can think of anything else to say, of course. Oh, one more thing. We'll be on the fast lines all the way to Plenborough, so be sure to wave at the slower trains as we pass them by. Once again, you just have to admire the sheer size of Drentborn Retaia. I can't wait to see this station teeming with trains and passengers. Right now, the station is a little bit of a ghost town. I'm sure it won't be long before Southeastern begin their services. The application is still under consideration as we speak, after all. Approaching Plenborough, we pass by the site of Plenborough East. I mentioned last time about the new housing development being planned, so let's just talk about that a little more. The land all around the railway has been rezoned for residential use as an attempt to rejuvenate the local area. Building will commence within the next couple of years, with a planned completion date being between 5 to 10 years from now. As for the old station at Plenborough East, there are proposals to turn the land above the tunnels into a public park to be both a local beauty spot and a tribute to the station that once stood there. We're back at the glass cathedral that is Plenborough Taurina. Much like Drentbourne, I just can't wait to see every platform here occupied by a train. Southeastern will eventually use this station as their western hub, with trains travelling both north and east from here. This is our reversing point. Originally, this service was going to avoid Plenborough by taking a new spur line between the coastal and Drentbourne lines, but this plan was scrapped in favour of using the reversal as a way to create additional connections and as a means to add contingency to the timetable. If you ask me, I'd say the right choice has been made, as now passengers travelling from Dendstone to Pruntford or Bar City have more choice as to which trains to catch, so good choice, Cross Network. Do you ever get the feeling of deja vu? I'm sure we've done this journey before. The train might be different, but the journey starts the same. Unlike last time though, we leave Plenborough on the fast lines towards the loop. Oh, and of course we'll be turning west at the loop junction rather than continuing north towards Drentbourne. Arriving at Ponding Hall, we are now officially on the South Coast route. This station has incredibly long platforms on the fast lines, and there's an interesting story behind this. So the high-speed network runs to both Bar City and Plenborough Taurina, but originally there were plans for trains at Bar City to continue south along the third rail network to Plenborough before reversing and heading along the south coast to Sanley. This would have been a more regional extension to the high-speed network, and not necessarily part of the main high-speed network itself. Stations along the coast had their platforms extended in preparation for services to start running, only for the project to be cancelled due to there being no rolling stock capable of operating on the third rail and at high speed. Such a shame, but who knows, it might become a reality still one day. Although we're on the South Coast route, we haven't actually reached the coast yet. Soon we'll be rolling alongside the waves, but before that we do have to pass through the very tight corners on the coastal loop. The flange squeals shouldn't be too loud, but it's a bit hit or miss when it comes to how soundproof these carriages actually are. Lucky with the flanges so far, and here we are at Prenville. Once again, the platforms are comically long due to the high speed project, meaning you could technically stop 2 full-length HSTs in a platform if you really wanted to. Maybe one day these stations could be reconfigured to allow more trains to occupy each platform, but for now, enjoy your leisurely walk to either end of the platform. Thankfully, the stairs are relatively close to the train's stopping point, so it's not too big a walk here. This is the tightest corner of the coastal loop, but it seems this carriage has pretty decent soundproofing. Nice work once again, Cross Network. It does help that there's a temporary speed limit around the bend whilst the study is carried out into realigning the track. I'll keep you posted if any changes are made here. Crossing over this inlet, we get our first true glimpse of the sea. We've travelled along coastal routes in this series before, but I never get tired of emerging from a tunnel or some thick woodland to see the sea right beside the train. It's just magical. Another station, another mile-long platform. Eagle-eyed viewers may have noticed the design of most of these stations are almost identical. That's because these stations were all designed by the same architect when the platforms were lengthened. It did help keep the costs down, but it can be tricky trying to work out where you are at night in the driving rain. Something to bear in mind, station designers, most platforms do look the same out the window of a speeding train. Just because we're on the coast doesn't mean there aren't long tunnels to thunder through. I don't know about you, but I always love it when stations are built at tunnel entrances. Standing on the platform listening to trains approaching through the echoing caverns is always exciting, especially when powered by diesels. Just hear that roar. We're now approaching the first major junction on this line at Slonwood Shoreside. This junction has already been earmarked for a major rebuild before it's even reached capacity. A massive design flaw was discovered during testing, meaning the whole station approach needs to be remodelled. I can't wait to pass through again just to see what they've changed. I'm sure you can guess where Slonwood Shoreside gets its name from. The lapping waves can be heard from the platforms, and there's a lovely salty sea smell as you disembark from the train. Once again, we have the ludicrously long platforms, part of the cause of the design flaw I mentioned earlier, and thankfully here there's an overbridge between platforms under the central train shed, meaning no long walks are necessary when changing trains. This is where the South Coast route is met by the as yet unbuilt main line to Queen City Junction, or at least I think that's where it will run to. They haven't actually announced it yet. It would make sense though, considering there's a western connection further up the line that will soon pass by. The western station throat here also will need to be rebuilt to make the station less complicated, so again, I'm looking forward to seeing that next time we pass through here. Leaving Slonwood Shoreside, we passed through the messy western station throat. You can tell the lines were hastily realigned when the northern tracks were built. Nothing here makes any sense. The lines curving away to the north come to a dead end just after Slonwood West Station. Perhaps the tracks could be used for storage for now, who knows. We meanwhile continue heading west along the coast. We'll be shoreside for pretty much the entire way to our next stop at Sanley Market Harbour. Another messy junction means only one thing. We're now approaching Sanley Market Harbour Station. This east-facing junction is the second candidate to connect up to Queen City Junction, although again, it'll need a bit of a tweak to make it both look nicer and function better. The lines joining from the north now is the current main line to Queen City. This route is used by the cross-country HSTs between Sanley and Beffingway, and will soon be used by southern services as well as other trains to and from Queen City Junction. Sanley Market Harbour is a pretty quiet station right now, but will soon become an important hub. The station was originally the 4th southernmost platforms, with the additional 4 being added when the route to Queen City was built. This has made the station look somewhat lopsided, especially when looking at the junction to the west. To be fair, this whole section of line between Plenborough and Sanley needs rebuilding, with better consideration for the junctions that have haphazardly been added to the line over the years. Sounds harsh, I know, but trust me, these junctions look terrible and function much worse. So this is that terrible junction I was talking about. All the flyovers and dive-unders make it look an absolute mess, and also cost an absolute fortune to build. This whole junction needs to be scrapped and started again, this time with a proper plan in place. We're now briefly turning inland. This section of the line was built as a somewhat extension, deviating away from the original alignment to serve the community set back from the water's edge. Don't worry though, we'll be back by the sea before you know it. As we cross over this inlet, we approach our next stop at Plenborough Market. This inlet will eventually be used by both ferries and cargo ships heading out to sea, but for now the waters remain empty. There's not much to say about Henfingborough Market Station really. It's a 4-platform station, with of course the long platforms on the fast lines, but other than that, everything is fairly standard. That is until the new cruise terminal is constructed to the east, then things will be exciting. Part of the proposal is to move the station closer to the bridges to the east in order to connect to the new cruise terminal, with a bus station also included in the complex to connect to the surrounding towns. Whether or not this happens remains to be seen, but it sure sounds like a neat idea nonetheless. We're now travelling on the short hop to our next stop at Chindingbury, passing through Maddinghatton Tunnel. It's weird to go from the coast one second to deep in a tunnel the next, but I guess that's just railways for you. Henfingborough Market was nondescript, then Chindingbury is even more generic. 4 platforms and not much else. The only reason this service calls here is in order to create contingency in the timetable, otherwise we'd have roared straight through instead. I'll be honest with you all, we're at the stage of the journey now where there's not really much to talk about. This section of the line has remained largely unchanged since it was built, with the only real changes being going from 2 tracks to 4, and the additions of stations once the nearby towns grew large enough. The problem with a long journey like this is you do end up travelling through areas with little to no history. Just keep an eye out the window for any water, and enjoy the run over the Great Parkbourne Viaduct. Corningbury East is another station that could soon be transformed thanks to shipping. Unlike before though, this station is staying put. Instead, a new bus service will shuttle passengers to and from the soon-to-be-built ferry piers along the coast, allowing connections along the coast to some of the smaller towns and villages. As we leave Corningbury, it's one last look at the sea before we turn inland. The gaps between stations are pretty short along this section, as it turns out the coast is pretty popular for building towns. Who knew? We're starting to curve north as part of the Sanley Loop. This is another quirk of the South Coast route, a loop at each end and both are incredibly inefficient. Cross North is again a very basic station. There are currently stairs to nowhere from the platforms, with the planned road bridge yet to be built. At this point we're not far away from our final destination of Sanley, just a couple of stops in fact. From here, I'll leave you to enjoy the ride for a bit, but I'll be back when we hit the Sanley Loop proper to give you the full history of that. Leaving Beddingstone, we travel through the Beddingstone Triangle. To the north is the line to Charwood, connecting to Gar City South Western and Guard City's Great Western services. We're heading west today towards Sanley. This triangle will eventually be used by trains in all directions. Right now, trains only go from west to north and back, and west to south and back. I think that made sense. I'm writing this script after a long journey, so chances are I'm speaking gibberish right about now. Our penultimate stop at Cutford Valley. Now here's where things get interesting. Cutford is currently on the South Coast line, but soon it will only be on the line to Charwood. The plan is to rebuild the approaches to Sanley, creating a new route for the South Coast line that will bypass Cutford, travelling closer to the coast itself instead. This will also reduce the number of tracks through Cutford from 4 to 2, which personally I do think will work better. The entire South Coast route needs rebuilding. I've said that already today, but M4J Transport are taking that idea to a whole new level. The entire run from Plenborough to Sanley will be reduced to 2 tracks, with strategic passing loops along the way for faster services to overtake slower ones. Junctions will be simplified, with timetabling set up to avoid conflicting movements. You can already see how this will benefit Sanley, with the eyesore approaches reduced significantly, with the former railway land being reused for regeneration. We'll be back to see the changes once they've been made, but for now, let's pull into Sanley Central and end this video properly. Here we are then, Sanley Central. You can tell the station has been recently modernised, being rebuilt to reflect Plenborough, but not entirely copy it. Unlike at Plenborough, the original station building has been retained, and the outside train sheds have been preserved too. We'll be covering the history of Sanley next time out, so for now, thank you very much for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video, and feel free to share these videos with anyone you think would be interested in watching too. Drop some comments down below with any suggestions for future journeys, enjoy the end of journey stats, and until next time, I will see you soon.